Kamatakiyapi Betuashte. Which screen can you guys see? Feels like I'm showing the wrong one. Dr. Vermillion, do you see my slides?
Yes, I do.
Perfect. All right, I'm Betuashte. Pantewaste nape choose up below. Guthrie Capicella machi up below. Lakota ia chanku washte chazeki. Wana Iniawaslaha Oyanke Hemataha Wana Rochester Otuahe El Mayo Clinic Washi Echamun. Good day, everybody. My name is Guthrie Capicella. It's good to be with you all for another Indigenous Health Topics. Quick housekeeping for everybody. Please do add your questions in the Q&A function. I will work on the chat function. I'd like to be able to communicate back and forth with you guys during the presentation. And we will get to questions at the end. I'm very proud to introduce Dr. Laurel Vermillion, President Emeritus from Sitting Bull College. She's going to be presenting today on Cradle Board to Career, the Tribal College Role in the Tribe's Educational Journey. Let me stop sharing here, Dr. Vermillion, and I'm going to hand it off to you.
Okay, Pilami Aye, Toshka. Ampete washte, Chante washte, Nape Cheusapi. Oyate Wiankapi we, Imachiapi. Washichuya, Dr. Laurel Vermillion. So I introduced myself in Lakota, and I see my Toshka has learned the language beautifully. And so I say congratulations to you, Toshka. So I'm Dr. Laurel Vermillion, and I'm Emeritus President to Sitting Bull College. Sitting Bull College is one of the tribal colleges located in beautiful Standing Rock Nation and encompasses North Dakota and South Dakota. I come from a family that I grew up along the river, the Great Missouri River. I'm an enrolled member of Standing Rock, and my parents, both Henry and Elsie Martin Left Hand, are enrolled members, and so are my grandparents. So I come from a long line of Lakotas. My mother's side is actually comes from comes from the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa, and so I have some mixed blood there. My family was a rancher, did a little farming, but mostly were ranchers. So I grew up, again, close to the river. I grew up on a ranch. We raised horses and cattle. My parents and my grandparents were very hardworking, had big gardens, all of that. And so I grew up with the understanding, and I knew and learned at a very early age how to work hard. I had a lot of chores all the time. And so I grew up in that way. I went to a country school about 5 miles away from my home. And so that's where my young educational years began, at a country school. We used to be able to ride our horse to school, our ponies, and keep them in the barn there. So really a beautiful life. And also we lived right next to my grandparents, my father's parents, Mary and Frank Martin. And that experience itself was I look upon that now and I realize what a beautiful experience that was to grow up close to your grandparents. I learned a lot of the traditional ways, and I didn't even realize that education I was getting until I got older and really appreciated it. We hauled our water from the river, and I'm going to tell you these stories because I think it's really important to have an idea of where I come from and the things I've gone through and where I am today. So I'm just going to share a little bit of that with you. My grandparents, we hauled our water from the river, which was probably about 1.5 miles away. But I remember going with them in a team drawn wagon, and we would go down to the river in that horse-drawn wagon with barrels and fill up water. But one thing that I really remember and stands out in my memory so vividly is the times when we went through the beautiful forest to get to that river to haul water. And then when we'd come back we would stop in that beautiful forest and we would pick wild grapes. And it was such a beautiful experience that I can close my eyes today and I can feel that, the beauty of all of that. And I share that with you because those trees, that forest that I remember, are gone. And that was due to, of course, to the dam, to the flooding. And that's one thing that I really wish I could have been able to share with my children and my grandchildren, but that's gone now. And so that's a memory that I hold close to my heart. I'm enrolled in the Great Standing Rock Nation. I know you probably have heard a little bit about Standing Rock through DAPL and the fight with DAPL. It's still, I believe it's still going on. I still hear a little bit about it, but the oil is running, which, we fought hard against, but it is running, but I don't think the fight is done. I talked a little bit about our small community. Standing Rock, again, encompasses North Dakota and South Dakota. So I grew up in the South Dakota portion in a very small community of Kennel. And that name tells you a lot because the name the name of Kennel is actually named after Father Martin Kennel. And so the community where I grew up was very, very Catholic. And so I grew up as a child. Like I said, I learned a lot from my grandparents on, how to prepare dried meat and how to dry turn, all of those kinds of things. But my spirituality and my religion was Catholic because we were a very devout Catholic community. And so that really impacted my early life. And I didn't realize that until I got older. Like I said, I went to country school, but after I got older and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, I went to high school here in McLaughlin, graduated, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I got a job as a Head Start teacher's aide, and I met a doctor who was really, I think his area was, making things happen. He was a mover and shaker, Dr. Barden. And he wanted me, he said, Laurel, you should start taking classes. We're going to start a tribal college. And so I said, well, what is that? And so he said, well, it's going to be a college here. It's going to be here on Standing Rock, and we're going to offer classes, college classes. And so I was really intrigued by that because I like to go to school. I love learning. And so while I was working as a teacher's aide, I started taking classes it was called Standing Rock Community College. And I share that story with you because education, college, higher education wasn't really on my radar. I wasn't really thinking about that until he told me that it was going to be available right there on Standing Rock located in Fort Yates, North Dakota. So I said, absolutely, I want to go. Absolutely, I'll start taking classes. So that's where my higher education started, was at Standing Rock Community College back in the early 70s when the tribal colleges were just brand new. They were just now starting. They were starting by opening classrooms in old buildings. In my experience with my first classes is when we started back in 1973, and I was probably one of 5 students who started, who took a class from Dr. Barden. And we didn't have a classroom. There was no building, there was no college. So he said, well, we'll go meet over at this new building. Douglas Sky Memorial Complex was a new building in Fort Yates. And so he said, we'll meet there and we'll have class. So we did. We met him there that morning. And of course, there was no classroom. So he said, well, we'll just get some chairs. And so we gathered chairs when we went and sat in a hallway. And that was where we started our first classes for Standing Rock Community College. And that was the beginning of my journey in higher education. And so after that, the tribe had a building called a skills center, and they gave that building to the college so that they can have a college site. And they leased it to Standing Rock Community College. And so that's where I started my classes while I was working as a teacher's aide, and I got into teacher education program, got my bachelor's degree, and then went on to be a teacher at the Standing Rock Elementary School. So that was a beginning for me. That was an eye opener, because then taking those classes, taking the Lakota language classes, taking the culture classes, started me to think about, I know nothing about my own beautiful culture. I know nothing. And so learning about who I was as a Lakota was so beautiful and so eye-opening for me. And I remember asking my mother, um, Mom, how come I don't know this? How come I don't know about my beautiful culture? How come I don't know about the language? And I said, you're all fluent. My mom and my dad, my grandparents, they were fluent, Lakota. And I knew nothing. And so she said, well, and it's because of she said, we all went to boarding schools, and, they weren't great experiences. And so I always made up my mind. I made up my mind then, she said, that I wasn't going to teach my children, because I didn't want them to go through some of the things that I went through. We weren't allowed to speak our beautiful language. We weren't allowed to practice anything. So she said, I decided I was not going to teach my children. But as I learned more and more about who I was as a Lakota, I learned more and more about my beautiful language, my beautiful heritage, my beautiful stories. And so I was very, very thankful that the college was there. Dr. Art Amiot, you probably have heard the name. He's I think, a very well-known artist in Indian country. He was my culture teacher, and he was such a fun, wonderful teacher that he made learning so fun. And he helped us then to understand really who we were as Lakota people, as Native people. So that was my journey. As I taught school at Standing Rock Community College, I actually went on to get a master's degree while I was teaching, and received that. And then I became principal for a few years down at Marty Indian School. And then the Standing Rock Community College then recruited me to come back and to apply for the Dean of Academics. And so I came back and I got the position. And I was at the college since 1995 as the dean, and then I moved on into the position of VP of Operations. And then in 2005, I became the president. And then I just retired this past January. So I was at the college for many years. And one thing I can say is that it was a great experience, great experience. And some of the things that I want to talk a little bit about the tribal colleges is that, like my story that I just shared with you, many, many, many of our enrolled members would not or did not have an opportunity to go to college. If it wasn't for our tribal colleges right here at home, many of our enrolled members would not attend college. And we hear that story over and over and over again. And just like me, how impactful it was for me to learn about who I was as a Lakota person, it's still happening. It's still happening, and our students say that. And what I see at our tribal colleges is our students are hungry. They're hungry and passionate for learning about who they are. And it's in the young people with their children. I hear them, talking to them, saying, talking Lakota to them, and it does my heart good. I'm so happy that our language and our culture and our traditional ways is going to continue through this. So at Sitting Bull College, we also have a Lakota, we call it the Immersion Nest, and it's a small school for babies through about age 7 or 8. And through that program, the young children learn from elders and from teachers. They learn the language, they speak the language. There's one classroom that's full immersion, so you can't speak any English in there. And then there's another one where you can speak some English depending on the age. So I have two grandchildren that I'm raising, and many of us here on Standing Rock are raising our grandchildren. And so I have two children that have gone there. They've gone there ever since they were like 2.5 years old. And one is 11, my girl is 11, and the boy is 7. And so spent many years there at the language immersion school. And what I see, it just blows me away that they know so much. This introduction that I gave you, because I'm not a fluent speaker. I never learned, even though my grandparents, they all knew my parents, but I never learned. They never talked Lakota to me. So this introduction that I gave you, my granddaughter, 11-year-old Akila, helped me to learn these things. And so I'm always asking them, what does this mean and what does that mean? And so they're teaching this old Unchi about Lakota, and they're teaching me about the beautiful ways that we have. But that's the importance of our schools, our immersion schools, so that our young people can learn, our young people can continue our traditional ways. And then as they get into the schools, I know the schools are wanting to do more, the K-12 schools, and then also, of course, the colleges want to continue. So there are 37 tribal colleges nationwide, and every one of them are very unique in their beginning, how they started, the challenges that they had. Funding usually was a big challenge. They didn't have a building like us. We started with no building. And then the building we did get finally had a flat roof. And so when I was the VP of operations, I remember that flat roof was always leaking, always leaking. So, and I remember that there was a hallway, and of course, when it would rain, it would all leak. And so they had buckets and trash cans all down the hallway to catch the rain so it wouldn't get all over. And so, of course, the students named that hall Bucket Hall. And everybody knew that. If you ask anybody at the college or any that has gone to that college, to our college, ask them about Bucket Hall. They can give you the whole story on that. So anyway, that's kind of how all of the 37 tribal colleges that are, we have nationwide, they all have those same humble, very humble beginnings. And they also have some of the strengths that I just mentioned. They have classes, all of the instructors that we have, they're all, they want to all infuse the culture and the language into what they're teaching. So that so when the students take those classes, not only are they learning, history, or they're also learning about the beautiful language that we have and learning to practice it. Hey, some of the things that I believe that really helped us as college, Sitting Bull College, was the fact that we have some consortiums. So we have the North Dakota Tribal College Systems. And what this is, about 2007 or 2008, we came together as a group. And so there's five reservations in North Dakota. And so each of the reservation has a tribal college. And so we come together as presidents. We came together monthly, and we took turns being the chair of the North Dakota Tribal College System. So we would take turns being the chair. And then, so we worked together on so many things. A lot of it was funding. The North Dakota legislative system, the congressional people there, they don't know a lot about tribal colleges. In fact, they know very little. And so what we did is we would go up to the state legislature, and we would meet with different legislators, and we would visit with them about us. And then we also put in for funding for non-beneficiary funding. So what that is it's funding that we get from the state for our students that are not enrolled members of our tribe or any tribe. And so we do not get any federal dollars for them. And so these are state citizens because they live in North Dakota, and that's the story that we wanted to tell our legislators. These are North Dakota state enrolled members of your state, and so we did go out and we got some funding back in '08, I believe it was the first time that we were able to get it, and then all through until now, it's still I believe it's still we are still able to get funding. And this is non-beneficiary funding that comes to us for those students, again, that are maybe non-native or they're not enrolled members. And so some of the tribal colleges have a lot of those students. And so this funding really is very beneficial to them. At Sitting Bull College, we don't have a lot. We maybe have 4 or 5 that we are able to get funding for, but the other tribal colleges are really benefiting from this. We try to do this in the state of South Dakota because, as you know, we encompass South Dakota as well, and so many of our students come from South Dakota to Sitting Bull College, and so they're state citizens of South Dakota. So I've tried a number of times to work with the other South Dakota tribal college presidents to try to get this same funding, but it always is stopped short because they will not even consider it. They say that if they do give us funding, then we have to go under state control, and that's something that that's not going to happen. That'll never happen. So that's one thing that this North Dakota Tribal College System consortium that we have is really a great working body. And so anything we go after grants, whatever grant it is that maybe we need to help all of us. Usually it's IT grants that we're looking for. We can get other grants that any of us might need. So as a consortium, we go after those dollars, which really works well. We also have at Standing Rock, we have a consortium for, it's called Ed Leaders, Standing Rock Consortium for K-12 schools. And that covers all the schools on Standing Rock. I believe there's 9 schools. And so all of the schools also through consortium work together. And I can see the benefits of that because the schools are not out there by themselves. They're able to come together as a team to again go after grants. We have a professional development day. The college is right there, comes to all of the meetings and is there to help. So if the schools have questions about higher education, or they may have questions about dual credit, and so that's a place where they can, we can help each other. And the K-12 schools are, they're having right now a difficult time recruiting teachers. So we have a teacher education program at Sitting Bull College. And I believe I think the last time I asked, there was probably about maybe 15 or so teachers that were, going through to get a degree in teaching. But I wish we can see more. I know a lot of the classes that we're offering are going to be online so that we can really recruit those teachers or those students that want to be teachers from the other tribal colleges that might have a 2-year program. So we want to be able to assist them with getting their bachelor's degree. But what I'm seeing over the last probably 5 or more years is really that drop in students who are wanting to go into the teaching degree program. And that really makes me feel, I'm sad about that because again, was an elementary teacher and I loved it so much, but I just don't see, students going into that. And so I asked, I know I have a granddaughter who was considering going into it, but she said no, she's going to do something else, and I just don't know why. And she said, well, it's just too hard, the classroom. She said it's hard to, all of the different things that you have to do, the paperwork and all of that. Plus she said, you have to work with parents, and sometimes parents aren't the best and the nicest people to work with, and then you have to work with administration. And so I just think there's a lot of things that need to be addressed, because we do need to have our own teachers teaching our children. and not teachers coming from someplace else, because they know our kids, and our kids are different. They learn different than the non-native, and I know that because I've spent many years in the classroom as a teacher's aide and then as a teacher for 14 years. But one thing I know for sure is that our children, our Lakota children, they're quiet, and they're humble, and they don't want to be that student that gets up there and says, "I want to be first," or that competition that's always out there in the non-native classroom. Our children don't do that. Our children are different, and so sometimes if our native children go to a classroom where that's expected, that competition, and they don't do well in that competition, then they're seen as less than, when in fact they're not less than. They're just doing what they know and what they feel is right. So that's just one small example of I think the difference in our kids, and that's why I say it's really important for us to get our own teachers in the classrooms. Okay, we also have we work closely as tribal colleges. I know many of our tribal colleges in the 37, when we come together as in AHAC, when we come together as board members, because we all serve as board members then for the American Indian Higher Education Consortium, or we call it AHAC. And so when we come together, even though some of us are, we're far apart, some in Montana, some down in, Oklahoma, and here in Montana, but we all have very similar issues and concerns and problems that we're faced with as tribal colleges. But one thing I know is that we try to work closely with our tribes, because our tribes charter us. And so at Standing Rock, ever since I've been president, since 2005, we've always had a really good relationship with our tribe. And I just think that's so very important, because some of the other tribal colleges that run into some problems, or they run into some issues, they butt heads with their tribes. And I feel, so bad about that, because the tribal colleges are really, I think they're so much needed. But for Standing Rock, they've always supported Sitting Bull College. And in fact, when we were starting our IRB, Institutional Review Board, when we were starting the IRB, I went to council to see if they would support the idea. And so they asked, well, what is this? And so I told them about, what it is. And I said it would be a way for you to take a look at people coming to our reservation, and wanting to do research. Nobody's paying attention to that. So I said, this will help that. And so they said, well, can you help us too, and have, because people come to us too and want to do research. We said, absolutely. So we have a really good working relationship with our IRB, so that anybody that comes to the tribe, then they come through Sitting Bull College's IRB process to make sure that everything is looked at and done the way it's supposed to be done. So probably the next thing then I'll just do is talk about AHAC, and I think that we have a in Washington, we have the main office. And so the main office then kind of oversees everything. But we do have the tribal colleges then have an exec team made up of presidents that are chosen by the board. And again, the board is made up of all of the tribal college presidents. And this is really, I think, a good working it's a good working group, because we're able to address a lot of things. We have our CEOs right situated in Washington, and so they can go if they have to go to the congressionals, if they need presidents to come and do testimony. So it's really a good working process that we have with the American Indian Higher Education Consortium. And so that has had, I think we've had that for ever since I think we started in 1973. Okay, The AHEC is supported by member dues. So each one of the tribal colleges then pay dues to the AHEC office. And so that's how they're able to hire people to work there. We also go after grants, looking for grants to help in all areas. So say some of the tribal colleges are needing assistance in IT, or they're needing assistance in I know this is one big one, is that construction. There's a huge need for construction at our tribal colleges, and if you go visit the tribal colleges, some have really nice, beautiful buildings, and some are struggling. And so, like at Sitting Bull College, we were so lucky to start our construction process back in probably about 2000, and about 2000 we started our construction process, because prior to that we were working out of that building I told you about that had all the leaks, and so we needed to move into something better. And so at that time, there were dollars available, dollars for writing grants for construction. And so we wrote grants. I know one of our buildings is built with 3 different grants, and of course they all have all their requirements of reporting. And so it was. I remember it was such a lot of work to try to. But if you look at Sitting College today, and if you can Google Sitting Bull College, or um, yeah, go online and you can Google it and see. But we have a beautiful, beautiful campus in Fort Yates, and little by little we built buildings, and it took a lot of hard work. It took a lot of planning. It took a lot of putting dollars together to actually build a building. And so it didn't come easy. And that's something that AHEC, the whole group, can help with. And so many times we've gone to federal government to ask for additional dollars for construction. And sometimes they give us construction dollars, and sometimes they don't. And because we're rural, it's more expensive for us to build. It just costs more. And after COVID, it seemed like it's been even harder to build, because there's such a need in the city of Bismarck. That's where we usually get our people for construction, and because they are in such need of construction people, so they don't have to come to us. They're able to just to work in Bismarck. And so it's really been difficult to try to get people to come and do any kind of construction for us, for Sitting Bull College. And I know the cost is very expensive. So it's been difficult. We are still, even though we have a beautiful campus, we have beautiful buildings, we're just, we're very lucky and very fortunate to be able to build all of those buildings with dollars that we got for grants, and from that we got from the legislators that allocated dollars to us. So even though we were able to get all those buildings, there we're still in need of more. And we don't have. We wanted to have a maybe like a gym or a wellness center, I guess is what we're calling it, because we have nothing like that for our students. And so we are hoping to have to get dollars for that. We also do not have a cafeteria, and we're wanting to get dollars for that. So that those are 2 areas that we were really looking at trying to raise dollars for, to be able to build something like that. And there was a couple of people that I had talked to that were interested, but I think it's just going to take probably more funders than 1 or 2 to be able to build the wellness center that we were wanting to build. So that's Sitting Bull College. And then we have 2 sites. We have one in Mobridge, South Dakota, and that site used to be an old elementary school. And so we purchased that old elementary school. It was a brick building that we purchased, and but we put a lot of money and a lot of energy and construction into that building. It was an old building that had a boiler system, and that you can tell just by that's ancient. So that whole system had to be replaced, and I know that took a lot of dollars. So, and then we also have a site here in McLaughlin, South Dakota, but our numbers are down. Our enrollment numbers are down across the board, and I'm not sure why, because we are trying to offer more classes, more programs online, because we know that that's what young people want, is they want their classes online. They don't want to have to go in person. Some do, but it sounds like the majority want them offered online. And so we are taking a look at, okay, so how do we increase our enrollment? And I think this is just me, because I lived here my whole life. I was only lived off of Standing Rock during the time I was at Marty Indian School as their principal. And so other than that, I've always lived here on Standing Rock. And so I know the people, I know the families, I know the communities. And I think that we need to work harder with our families, because there's a lot of problems. And it's not news to anybody that we have alcoholism, we have the drugs. And so when you don't have healthy families, you are not able to bring in, or to offer, or even for people to even want to go to school. That's the last thing on their agenda, is to take classes or go to school, because they have this addiction. And so that's the elephant in the room that people have a hard time talking about. But I talk about it because I think something needs to be done, and something has to be done. And a lot of it, I think, has to come from us, because we live here. And so I try my best to teach. I'm trying to work harder with the K-12 schools, because I know they're struggling with teachers. So I know, as I retired in January, but I think I've been busier more than I was when I was working as the president. So, because I just think that there's such a need for collaboration. There's a need for us to tell our story, so that, because I know there's funders out there, and I know there's people that want to help. And so I think we need to figure out, how do we best move forward? What are some things that we could do to make Standing Rock better, and to make our homes better, and to make our tribal colleges better? If our student enrollment numbers are going down, we need to try to figure out how to fix that, and how to really get out there and start talking to young people about college, and educating them about college. So that's something that's I'm going to be doing. I think I'm going to be working hard at that. Let's see if there's anything else that I can. Toshka, do you have anything that you want me to expand on, or?
Do you want to talk about the 2 and the 4-year programs? And maybe any of the connections that you guys have with other 4-year programs?
Okay, sure. Yeah, we offer at City Mill College, we offer 2-year programs, we offer 4-year programs, and we even offer some, I believe, 3 master programs. And so we do work with other colleges. We work closely with the land grant colleges in North Dakota and South Dakota. And I know a lot of that is like ag related, where there's a lot of grants that they work together on. A lot of the students that work together. We also have like environmental science that we the 4-year program that's one of the most popular classes. Environmental science. Business administration is also very, very popular, and nursing. It's very, very popular. So those are 3 popular programs, degree programs, that our students are really, interested in and wanting to pursue. So what we're wanting to do is to the other tribal colleges in North Dakota, Most of them have 2-year programs, and so they're wanting to work with us to get their students to go through the 2-year programs and then move into our 4-year programs. So I know there's a big push for that, and so the other tribal college presidents in North Dakota are working toward that, and we're working together to see how we could best do that. And a lot of it has to be distance learning because we know that the students don't like to move. They have families. They don't want to leave their families. They have their homes there, and so we have to provide distance learning for them so that they can move into our 4-year programs and then hopefully on into our master's programs. Because again, our numbers are not good, and we need to figure out how to best do that. We also work with, like I said, the state colleges and universities somewhat. I know there's some things I know in the ag where our students go to summer school there, and then they can come back to the college, to Sitting Bull College. So there's some work that we do with them as well.
We do have a few questions.
Okay.
So one question came from Diana earlier on when you were talking about the language nest.
hmm
And she was wondering if music and singing were used as part of that curriculum.
Absolutely, yes. And when my 2 grandchildren, my Takoshas, were going there in the morning, they have circle time, and they come together, they smudge, and then they stand in a circle and they sing prayer songs. And
Mm.
so they invite parents and grandparents to come to that. That was again before COVID. And so I would always go to that. And through that experience, I learned many of the prayer songs. And so when they sing like the flag song or the Four Directions song, I know those songs. And it's just because of that experience I had with the kids and participating with them. So yes. And they also have the drum group where, they work with the boys to sing at the drum. So yes, they do have that as well.
Um, a long time ago, I used to present. I used to present to K-12 classrooms here in Rochester, talking about just filling in on some of their native curricular units, and so we would, you know, a lot of preconceived notions about Native people, not a large student Native population here. But one of the things that I would do to show them kids just like them is there was a video from the nest on Halloween, and they were all dressed up in their Halloween costumes, and they were singing and drumming, and like little 5-year-olds. It was the cutest little thing with this little Captain America and his drum. Um,
Oh,
yeah, I loved it. Um,
yes.
Another question came in. Do students attending tribal colleges, are they eligible for financial aid assistance in the same way that they would be at a 4-year school somewhere else?
Yes, absolutely. They put in for the same funding that other students at state colleges or anywhere, and they're eligible for them as well. They also our tribe, Standing Rock tribe, has the education department, and they have funding for our enrolled students, enrolled members that are going to college. They also get funding from them. So yes.
And then I saw another question. This is a really good question that came in from Maria. How can we better structure classroom environments and teaching styles, both in person and in virtual, to create a greater sense of belonging and inclusion for Native American students?
What a beautiful question. That is a beautiful question. Um, what I would do is I would do some research to see and I would see what our native students, what tribe are they coming from? What is their, are they Lakota? Are they Dene? Or, what tribe are they coming from? And then through that learning, then you can add things to your classroom, whether it be books, whether it be maybe pictures, so that the students can really identify with that because they want to belong, and if you don't have anything that they, feel is a part of them, then they don't feel like they're a part of your classroom. So I would do some research on where your children are coming from.
That's fantastic. Um, Something that we could all learn more about the tribes and the tribes that are around us, and then the tribes that our staff and students come from, for sure. Um, I got a question here from another Standing Rocker online, Mr. Brandon Alkire. He is wondering, is there a reason why the collaborations in South Dakota and North Dakota haven't included Minnesota?
Mm, I guess I'm not sure what haven't included Minnesota.
And you were talking about the your consortium that you've been
Mm,
working with at the North Dakota level for the colleges there.
Okay, okay. So because we have students from North Dakota and we have tribal colleges in North Dakota, that's why we came together as a consortium. And then we also are located in North Dakota. And same thing with South Dakota. We have 2 sites in South Dakota. And we have students from their South Dakota residents. We don't have any Minnesota residents or we don't have any classrooms. We don't have any sites in Minnesota.
We can fix that.
Okay, there you go.
Um, Question from Misty on here. Does SBC offer any pre-nursing health course? Can't talk anymore. Health coursework like anatomy and physiology, chemistry and biology?
All of that. Yes, they have a 2-year nursing program. And I would encourage you to, again, go to our website and you could get all the information you need on how to, you can look at the nursing program. You could look at, the courses that are offered. You can look at, the instructors. And then, then you can get a good idea as to whether or not that's something you want to do. But I know that many of the nursing classes were going to be put online.
Misty runs a nursing program over at the PhD nursing program for Native students at the University of Minnesota.
Okay, sure. We were really struggling with getting a nursing director because we had a person, but she retired. And nurses, just like teachers, there's not a lot of people going into those areas. And so we thought, oh, how are we ever going to get somebody to come in and be the director for our nursing program? Because I believe they have to have a doctorate degree or at least a master's degree in that area. And so we were worried about it. And just then things happen for a reason. I said, Sitting Bull, who our namesake, is watching over us because just then the presentation college in Aberdeen, I think they ended. I don't know what happened or what, but they closed. And so all of their instructors and their directors and like that were looking for jobs. And so we were able to get people from there. So we lucked out. We have some excellent people now.
Yeah, I had a classmate who went to presentation.
Yeah. They're closed. They closed down.
Let me see here. Oh, here we've got a good one. We'll just, folks, if you have questions, please feel free to continue to add them in there. We will transition to the informal Zoom space, but if you're unable to join us, please do continue to add questions in here. So there's a question, are graduating students typically looking for remote opportunities and employment within their communities, or are they just as much looking for opportunities that may require them to maybe leave the reservation?
Okay, somebody just came to my door, so I kind of missed that question, but did you want to just kind of quickly say that again? I'm sorry.
Are the graduating students looking for remote jobs, sort of like the remote learning piece, employment within their communities, or do they look off reservation just the same?
All of that. Yeah, all of that. I know and again, depending on whether or not they have, like if they have a big family and they have a home, it's pretty hard for them to move. They want to stay. But if they're younger and they, like usually some of our gentlemen, our young men that go through some of our programs, like we have heavy equipment and CDLs and all those kinds of classes. So if they are going through something like that, then they know that they're probably going to have to go, somewhere else to get a job because there's not a lot of that type of work on Standing Rock.
Yeah. Um, a couple of different things that came in. One from the chat, Dr. Wilkie said she'd love to come visit the campus and visit with nursing students sometimes and the pre-health students. So I'll try to connect you both, and then maybe you can help her find our nursing program.
Absolutely. Yes. We really love to have visitors come to our campus because we're doing some amazing work. We're just doing some fantastic work there. If you take a look at our professors, our faculty and staff, our faculty and staff really I know there's one instructor when I was the Dean of Academics back in, the 95, 96. They're still there. I hired them and they're still there. I know one just retired and then the other one is, he's an environmental science professor and just, I think what happens is the professors really fall in love with not only the area, but they fall in love with our students and their families. So we don't have a big turnover in staff and faculty.
Yeah, I think one, it's the students are great, but I definitely think that the Missouri River is a understood place. It's so beautiful if you just go there, but it's not, it's in between the interstates, so no one knows where it is.
Yeah, it's true.